Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Now, historic films made in the spring of 1948 and just released show Eniwetok preparing for heavily guarded and still largely secret tests of new atomic weapons. The test's purpose is to measure atomic effects on thousands of different materials, 30,000 tons of them, not, as at Bikini, to prove military effectiveness.
San Francisco police say that 9 persons have been arrested in a narcotics raid on the headquarters of the Grateful Dead, a widely popular singing group. 2 members of the group, Rod McKernan and Robert Weir, and their business manager, Danny Rifkin, have been booked on suspicion of possessing narcotics.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
Here we got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, strange lights are causing a viral buzz on YouTube. Could we have caught extraterrestrial activity on a recent newscast? Brandon Arroyo investigates.
As the newscast ended, the controversy began back on September 26th. What is that light shining in the back of the dark night sky?
With coverage reaching all the way back to 1948, for over 70 years, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Now, Fate Magazine Radio is carrying on that tradition of setting the standard in paranormal talk radio as we report and discuss some of the most mysterious and perplexing phenomena imaginable in this strange world of ours. Now, here is your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am Kat Hobson, and you are listening to Fate Magazine Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I am so pleased that you are with us tonight because my guest is someone that is a friend. She is a brilliant ufologist. I love numbers. So for me, the way that Cheryl works just feeds my ability to understand, which is neat in ufology because that's not my strongest background, or it wasn't. I'm getting much better because of people like her and just all kinds of friends who are putting out great information. I think that one of the things that interests me the most about Cheryl is that she is just great with numbers. Her second book on the subject, UFO Sightings Desk Reference, United States of America, 2001 to 2020, had obviously not been released the first time that we interviewed. I was fortunate enough to get my hands on the first edition with the earlier dates, and I was blown away. I really was. The actual number of people who have seen this, information compiled, I don't even know how they came to get the records I have a friend, Tom Conwell, as you all know, who is also an author on this topic. And also Butch Wachowski is a friend of mine, and he is the UFO Reporting Center. So I do have exposure to a lot of this, but I'm going to welcome Cheryl in here because we have got so many things to talk about. She has new books in the works. She is doing all kinds of things. Cheryl Costa, thank you so much for being here. I'm glad to have you.
Thank you, as always. Thank you for having me on.
Well, we go back a ways, and and you have taught me so much through your work. The way that you and Linda initially set out to gather, compile, share was just so much work. How long did it take you once you first started to compile that first UFO Sightings Desk Reference?
The first book, we estimate, took us around 2,000 hours. Okay, it was done over weekends, over about 18 months. Because at that time, we both had day jobs, so to speak. I was retired from Lockheed Martin, but I had a day job working for a newspaper. So so we can only work on it on the weekends. And she works for a college, so we put the effort in on, me a little bit on Fridays, and then her and I would work on it on Saturday and Sunday kind of thing. We originally... I had been writing articles for the Syracuse New Times. I was their UFO columnist for 7 years.
Yes.
And we had done a thing where we had compiled, since New York State was my beat, the column's name was New York Skies. And since it was my beat, one of the things, we accumulated information about New York State. And I started doing it county by county, and there's like 62 counties in New York State. And we started showing the data that we had accumulated, and MUFON sort of collects the data, city and county, if the person making the entry knows what county they're in, is what it amounts to. National UFO Reporting Center, to my knowledge, does not collect the county data. In fact, I wrote them and they said, stick a pin in the map, and I said, okay.
Right.
So we developed a software algorithm. I was a retired IT person, so we backfill the combined database of MUFON and NUFORC for that period of time, 2001 to about 2015. And it was October in 2015. Linda and I were sitting in our neighborhood pub, staring over a couple of pints, and said, wow, look at all the cool stuff we found, because we started sharing the data with some of these retired MUFON investigators, MUFON state directors, retired guys, right? And they looked at it and said, we didn't know there were clusters there. We didn't know there were clusters there either, that kind of thing. And so Linda and I got talking. We were waiting for our food entrees, and I said, what if we did the whole country? And we just sat there and stared at each other for about another 10 minutes. And one of us spoke up and said, gosh, it would probably take us a year. And it ended up taking us 18 months. Okay.
Well, I guess at that point you were pondering your sanity as well as how you were going to get all that information detailed, and all of the other just logistics of that.
Yeah, towards the end of it, towards the end of that 18 months, I hate to say we were getting paranoid, but we were getting paranoid.
Right.
We had a couple of goofy things happen. We had our house alarm system disabled on us for some odd reason, and black cars with tinted windshields were sitting in front of the house.
Are you serious?
I am dead serious. And so we got very concerned about this. Somebody figured out what we were doing. And so we went out and bought a pack of thumb drives. And every weekend, as we got done with whatever work we were doing, we saved the work in the database and all of the effort that was done in that week. Okay. Remember, originally we had to clean up the data, MUFON data cleans up differently than National UFO Reporting Center data, and then there's an effort to make the two of them match each other and merge them into a database. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Okay, now stuff that took us, we didn't know what we were doing in those days back in 2015, 2016. No, but we did not know. Right. Stuff that took us a month to do then, I can do in a day now. Stuff that took us 2 or 3 months to do then, I can do in a week now. Okay?
Isn't it amazing how the skill set grows?
Yes. Well, the other thing was, remember, we were both formerly government contractors. She worked for a firm that supplied contract librarians to government libraries. She was the head librarian at the Environmental Protection Agency for 15 years. At the toxicology library. And of course, I worked for Lockheed Martin for 32 years. So both having been government contractors, the first rule of government contracting, do as little work as possible. And what that means... I
would vouch for that.
Well, but what that meant for us was if you learn how to do something, a process, we kept very, very rigid notes in a notebook of what we were doing and how we did it. And if we came up with a better way to make the mousetrap the next time we did it for another state or something like that, then we kept improving the process. Okay. And that was important. So the book, the 2015, what we call the 2001 to 2015, that book came out in 2007. Okay.
Right.
And 2017, I'm sorry. And, we were tied up with that, a lot of visibility with that. New York Times did a huge article about us in Science Magazine. So in the 2 or 3 years intervening up to 2020, so to speak, I had a lot of time to monkey around with the data and look at it different ways. A lot of rainy afternoons with nothing better to do. See, that's another thing. See, by this point, I was retired. And what a lot of people who are retired will tell you one thing. One, they will tell you, I don't know how I ever found time to go to work because everybody always finds something for you to do. And the first 4 or 5 months of retirement, it turns into Groundhog Day. You don't know what day it is. You have no time reference. It's like being a shaman. You completely lose track of what day it is, all this kind of thing, unless you got grandkids to keep you busy or something like this. But we're a childless family, so we had a situation where, in my case, it was the 4-day weekend from hell that just kept repeating, and so I had to get myself back into a regiment of my work of the working on the database. And hey, I am a housewife, so I worked my chores into a cycle of how I was going to do them during the weekend, what times and what period of time of day I'd sit down and work with the database or something like that. Okay, so unless I was running errands, I had a pretty rigid schedule during my normal daytime. Okay, to everything from getting the dishes done to doing the laundry or whatever. The goofy thing was I put about another 2,000 hours in from 2017 to 2019, just doing private research, crawling around in the data, trying to find things, looking for patterns, that type of thing. Got into 2020, and of course, when we all got locked down, Linda and I thought, well, maybe we could go ahead and do we had thought about doing a shapes only book, talk just about the shapes. But the problem was we wanted to go down to the city level. And something we discovered something. We knew when we did the first book, 3.5% of the 121,000 records that we had in the first book, 3.5% people didn't fill in what city they were in. They either
that
left
would make that a bit difficult.
It did, and that's a big number. 3.5% here. Let me do that for you. 121,000 times 0.03. That was 3,600 records that we did not have city. So what we had to do is we had to assign it to the city as unspecified, and then each county in every state had an unknown county. We called it unknown.
Right.
Okay, that's how we accounted for the extra. So we could keep the numbers of the sightings still within that state, but we didn't know where they were. Okay, so there was that. But something else we did.
Ethical thing you could have done with that.
Yeah, we wanted to keep the numbers there and be ethical about that. So the next thing we got into is in 2020, we'd just gotten locked down. Okay. A couple of goofy things happened. I'll go back and make sure I say what George Knapp called us up about. Okay.
Yes.
But, so what happened was I started looking at doing this shapes book, and I wanted to go down to the city level. We discovered at this point that about 14.5% of the database, and at this point our database was upwards of 167,000. Okay. 14% didn't spell their city right.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, from a data standpoint, you can't sort on a thing like that if it's misspelled or they use multiple case letters, up and down, everything are all small case letters or put a little space in the front of it or something like that, or all capital letters, and that became an issue. And then
this is stuff that people that don't do what you do would never think of.
Yeah.
They wouldn't understand what kind of issue they were creating. What a nightmare.
Excuse me, I was taking a pill. I don't know if your audience knows, I took my booster Pfizer shot for COVID yesterday, and both my spouse and I have been sweating off after effects all day long
and
today.
Yet she is still here. Is this a trooper or what? Because I know that Moderna almost just drove my stepmother to drink. So,
well, you wouldn't have if you tried to have the same review with me at 2:00 this afternoon. It wouldn't have happened because I was unconscious.
Bless your heart. Oh. Well,
but no,
I appreciate you. But
fever broke around. Fever broke about 5 o'clock. I went in and took a shower, and I don't feel too bad now. So
thank goodness.
Okay, well, back to 2020.
Yes.
So what happened was when we realized that, and not only did they not spell or have the right cases in there, they would put a space in there. Some people would spell it perfectly okay. They would say Selma, next to Joe's Bar or next to Bobby's Restaurant, and you can't sort on that kind of thing either. There always all this other minutia in there. So, so Linda and I talked about this and said, well, considering we were the whole country, the whole planet was locked down, we figured, well, there was nothing better to do. So I just started literally going. It was like putting myself on a Lockheed schedule. I was working 7.5 hours a day. I started in mid-August of 2020, and I started going through. We put a golden email list in there, merged it in such a way we could tell what cities is sorted by state and city, and we could fix the counties, we could fix the city spellings very easily. But you can only do about 1,500, 2,000 lines a day before you went buggy. Okay.
I don't know that I would make it through 2,000.
I never
That's
typically
a lot of work.
I never got through more than about 12 to 1,500. Sometimes if I was on a roll, I would get through maybe 2,000 lines. So typically I did about 1,200 to 1,500 lines, and we put the database into a flat spreadsheet so it'd be easier to look at. And so that took 650 hours, and I worked on that 5 days a week from mid-August of 2020 to the first week of January in 2021. Okay. And then, now let's go back to 2020, George Knapp. George Knapp calls me up about the first week of March, just before we went into the lockdown. He says, hey, are people calling you? Are there sightings? My phone's ringing off the hook. And he says, okay.
I heard that, and we actually have to go to a break.
Go ahead.
But I have a question for you when we come back, because
A,
I want to know your answer to him, but B, I have something else that I had seen come up with that. So we are going to go and do this little bit of stuff, and we will be right back. Thank you so much for being here with us on Fate Magazine Radio, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Warning, the following message does not necessarily reflect the views of WBHM-DB or its hosts, guests, listeners, or of any functioning adult in general. In fact, Frank should probably seek professional help. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, Frank Lee here. I thought that I would spend a few moments telling you about the positivity from the network here. The overall message of para-unity and happiness, and how everyone here wants to get along with everyone out there, and how everything is just wonderful. Wait, Cat's not looking. Okay, I've got something to really tell you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what's really going on. Honestly, all that being nice and positive crap was kind of hurting my soul, as dark as it is. So, what's really happening? Well, you see it all the time. Everybody and their brother out there has a paranormal team because they watched a couple of episodes of Ghost Hunters or some crap like that. So they go and they spend half their mortgage payment on tools and things that light up that they don't understand. And then the next logical step, after buying matching black t-shirts and posing like 90s rappers for their Facebook page, is to, of course, have their own podcast. Well, you know what? You're not going to find that crap here. What we have here at WBHM Digital Broadcasting is the best host, the best guest, bringing you real information. All of the hosts here on this network know their stuff. They are the people who have been out there doing the work, doing actual research. And no, by research, I don't mean binge watching some kind of cheesy TV show on Netflix. I mean reading books. I mean out in the field doing the legwork. And who are they interviewing on their shows? They're bringing you the people they have learned from. They're bringing you the best in the field, covering all kinds of topics, from UFOs and aliens to Bigfoot to cryptozoology to ghosts to anything you can think of, a bit strange and unexplained. It is here, and you're going to get the best information here. So stay tuned to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Don't go anywhere. Speaking of going somewhere, I've got to go before my mic gets cut. We'll see you there on WBHM-DB.
Welcome back to Fate Magazine Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. And my guest tonight is Cheryl Costa. And we have been talking numbers, and when we had to leave, Cheryl, you had just received a call from George Knapp questioning reporting.
Well, what happened was this was about the first week of March, just about the time we were getting ready to go into lockdown. Okay. And he called me up and says, "Hey, are your phones ringing off the hook? Mine are." He says, "Sightings seem to be back in droves." And to be honest with you, I told people, for your audience that doesn't know, the UFO sightings had fallen off by about 25% a year from 2014 down to 2017, where they hit bottom, quite literally tanked. And I told people, I said, this is part of a normal cycle. And they didn't believe me. Space Force chased them away, or this chased them away, or whatever, Heck, I even had somebody tell me, they probably ran out of grant money, went home for more grant money, I must have heard.
People are so funny.
Oh, they are. So I must have heard about 30 different explanations. So what I told people, I said, this is a natural cycle. They'll be back. Trust me. And I literally took 2019 off. Nothing was going on in the UFO community, and the newspaper had gone out of business. So I went to work on I was working on other projects. I had written a novel called Quiet Heads. It's about remote viewers. Mm-hmm. And so I just focused on that for 2019 because I had nothing better else to do. So what happened was George told me this. I said, well, let me see what the deal is, okay? So I went out and took a quick look at National UFO Reporting Centers. They, if you go behind their front pages there, they have an archival area there. And they had 2020's January and February data. Okay. Now, in that 2,000 hours from 2017 to about 2019, when I was spending a lot of rainy days looking at the data, I had developed a model for if a certain number of sightings come up in National UFO Reporting Center, I could pretty accurately predict where they were going, based where MUFON's numbers were going, because they tracked each other. But MUFON was about 39-40% of the overall data, and National UFO Reporting Center was like 59-60, something like that. So I pulled those numbers out and I stuck them in my model, and I said, this is beginning. I called George back and said, hey, this is going to look like the maybe the best year since we'd had since 2014 or 2013. And he thought that, wow, that's cool, so I'll keep him posted. So of course we all went into lockdown, and George had me on Coast to Coast with him shortly after that. And one of the things I said to him, I said, something special here. We discovered that hours of darkness and leisure time were major drivers of people's UFO sightings. Well, a lot of people called the show and said, wow, we're going into this COVID lockdown thing here. That would be the perfect national laboratory to see whether or not the numbers will spike nationally. And I agreed with them. So by the end of March, April, by May, we were able to capture the numbers and put them in. And son of a gun, if they didn't go through the roof. If I gave you the national chart for 2020, March and April go through the roof.
Well, one of the things, other than the fact that people had nothing but time and, were spending a lot of it outdoors.
Watching streaming TV and drinking. Yes, I know.
Well, that too. But a lot of the drinking, I think. But, the skies were clear. There were no craft in the sky for months. And I noticed in my particular region, the almost complete, I can't even imagine if we'd gone for, longer clearing our skies as far as the pollution went. I had blue skies and nothing in them. So at night, I had still my light pollution, but I had nothing else interfering with my viewing. If there was something in the sky, it was a satellite or it was a UFO.
Yeah, we sort of need, we take I have a reflector telescope I take out on the balcony, and it was really great viewing during that period of time. Yeah, it was terrific. Well, bottom line, how all this went, we were able to really get a good picture and confirm our theory that leisure time is a major driver. Okay, and so we wanted to start working on the next book, but we wouldn't be able to do that till 2020 ended and we got their data. Mm-hmm. So I spent all the time, like I said, from August to January, cleaning up all the city information. And while we were doing that, we fixed counties. In some cases, the software that I had used to put county data in the first book, because I did not realize there were these city entries that were misspelled and things like this, or had this other stuff, Joe's gas station, that kind of stuff. It put the wrong counties in. So we were able to clean that up. The other thing we did was we put latitude and longitude for the cities, and we put zip codes. Mm-hmm. Okay. And right now, as I've been reaching out the last few months to certain elected officials in Washington, D.C., and I gave them a printout. In most cases, I gave them a printout anywhere from a half an inch to an inch and a half thick of all the UFO sightings for the last 20 years in their state, printed out by zip code. And of course,
how
the politician.
Was that received out of curiosity, Cheryl?
The usual reception, crickets. I sent I can talk about this now. I couldn't talk about this a couple months ago. Senator Rubio, he's on the Intelligence Select, the Senate Intel Select Committee on Intelligence. He got a 5-pound package from us. He got the pink book. Okay, nice cover, very, very short cover letter. I mean, a half a page cover letter, terse, right to the point. Okay, a little executive summary saying how many sightings there were in one sentence. And then if you guys decide to have congressional hearings, we are the civilian experts on statistics. That's basically what we told him. Okay. And Linda wrote that letter. The other thing we did was, since he was from Florida, and Florida's the number 2 state in the country for sightings, in 20 years, 2001, 2020, they had a little over 11,000. So I printed out his entire state by zip code and what the sightings were, 2001, 2020, and the printout for that. I even printed out a map of how it's really weird. If you were to print out the UFO sightings in a state by city, it looks like it all congregates around major metropolitan areas. And everybody will knee-jerk and say, well, yeah, it's following a major population basis. But if you do it by zip code, the state looks like Swiss cheese.
Yep.
Okay, because they're scattered. And people say, well, why is the zip code important? Can you tell us what cities those zip codes? I said, no, that's not important. Because once you get away from a major metropolitan area, you start getting into the suburbs, you start getting into the bedroom communities, and then beyond the bedroom communities, little villages and unincorporated developments, that type of thing. Okay. And that's where you picked up the leisure time, nighttime numbers, which dominate the reports, but we could never prove it by looking at a major city. Okay, you have to go to the bedroom communities to get those numbers. Okay, so we printed him out, and I had to put it in a small notebook. It was about 1.5 inches thick. So he got this 5-pound package from us with our pink book, this letter inviting them to invite us to congressional hearings if they really would like to talk to the civilian side of this thing. Okay. And we did the same thing for a New York State representative. The guy wasn't I don't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. He was not the New York State, he was not the head of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, but he was a member of that. So we sent him that, and we gave him New York State, printed out a map of New York State by zip, printed by zip plate, printed by zip code, and also the whole printout of every zip code and what their sightings were. Again, we know they were delivered because they were signed for, but nobody has ever responded to us.
Isn't that fascinating, right? With all of the stuff that was going on at that time relevant to it.
Yeah, you have to remember that to some degree they still, what I'm literally afraid of, and I told me and Steve Bassett had this conversation. Steve is our lobbyist in DC, yes. And I had this conversation with him, and I told him I was afraid that if we did have talks, it was going to be a bunch of swaggering Navy pilots and a bunch of former Navy military spooks, and former intelligence guys. And they were going to dominate it because everybody perceives the government's got a handle on all of it. And that I do not believe they do.
Such a false perception.
It is a very false perception. And we've got a lot more civilian experts that know far more about it than a lot of people in the services. And,
but that is because the people in the private sector don't have to worry about CYA so much. They can you can call it as you see it. You're no longer military. There's not a risk factor other than people being
labeled a kook and a crackpot. That's the problem, right. The kook and the crackpot factor. Yeah. So what I get very concerned about, if you ever wanted proof of what Steve Bassett calls the truth embargo, I have sent to 12 different major media outlets. I mean, we're talking papers like New York Daily News, the New York Times, 60 Minutes, Chicago Tribune, Los Angeles Times. You pick that state if it has a major newspaper, Dallas Morning News, all those kinds of places. Okay. And I sent them a kit. In most cases, it had the pink book with it, the new pink book. The cute story makes sure I tell people why it's pink. Okay. Right. But the bottom line was, we sent them these books. Usually we would print out their entire state by zip code. Okay. The people over at Staples, where I get this stuff printed out, know me on a first name basis.
Well, no doubt.
And
they probably love to see you walk in the door.
They're cute. They really are, because they used to be very standoffish about it, but they've all grown to become UFOologists. Some of them. So we've converted a few. So we would send them off to these places. Crickets, silence. Nobody would reach out to us. We sent 60 Minutes, an extensive package, very short cover letter, no big rambling letter, raving they're here or anything like that. No, it was a very tight little professional letter with a 2-line executive summary and just saying, if you want the people who are the civilian experts, we are the people to talk to.
Well,
silence.
I'm sorry, they are not going to do anything with that. And it's ridiculous because it is the story of the millennium.
It's my editor at the Syracuse New Times, and I used to say it's the greatest story never told.
Absolutely. Can I interrupt you for a question? Because Robert in chat has something that I think would just fascinate people, and I've never asked you this. We've talked about some
as far as questions go, short of my ATM pin, I will tell you anything you want to know, honey.
Well, I don't need that, but we'll save that for later. Let's see. He says, beyond your sheer number of UFO reports, is there a case or are there cases that boggle your mind?
Okay. In terms of cases, I don't do case studies. In fact, I have had Linda and I have had tons of criticism within the UFO community because we don't do case studies. Oh, you're not valid researchers. They don't stomp around out in the weeds with us. They're not.
Well, your numbers.
Well, no. See, Linda and I have an answer. We don't like cow patties. We don't like ticks. We don't like barbed wire, and we don't like stomping around in Mrs. Murphy's barnyard.
We're like Indiana. Getting picked up by a triangle either.
I'm not worried about that so much as the fact that we decided not to do that kind of research. There were plenty of folks doing that. We decided to do like Indiana Jones and start in the library.
Right.
Okay, and crunch. This was virgin territory. Nobody else was doing it. And Linda and I were looking as quote two women in UFOlogy. We were looking for a niche nobody else was doing, and we still get a ton of criticism.
Do you?
We have had several venerable people in the UFO community. Can't mention names right now, but you know their names in a heartbeat. But some of them have quietly told us, if you have a perception that you're being sat on by the UFO community, honey, ladies, you are. There are people that just go out of their trouble to make sure we don't get at certain conferences and we don't get certain visibility because obviously we don't know what we're talking about. We're a couple of data heads. We're just playing with numbers.
Well, but the numbers matter because it's one thing.
People don't think so,
but they must. Because it's a data-driven.
Yes.
I mean, this is a data-driven situation because until you have the actual data there in front of you, and you can make an intelligent, analytical supposition, and then test that, you're not going to have any ground to begin. And Robert says, well, what then is the most important revelation told by your numbers?
Okay. Well, wait a minute. He wanted to know about a case study. Okay.
But you said that you weren't doing those.
No, but we do find what we call splashes.
Ooh, I like splashes.
Okay. Remember, I'm looking at a whole bunch of numbers. The daily average in the United States, I'm not going to say before 2008, before 2007, but since 2008, the daily average in the United States is somewhere between about 125 to 130 sightings per day. Okay, that's combined.
That adds up, girl.
Okay, that adds up. Okay, now the minimum number per day is typically about 1 to under 10. Okay,
right.
And then there's now Where it gets interesting is if you look at the maximum number per day for those years. Okay. You'll get a hit. So here is in 2010, the average number per day was 23.6. The minimum number per day was 4, and the maximum number was 349.
That's not an anomaly at all.
What we discovered is you could look at the noise. You can look at this chart. We have a chart we call a day-by-day chart. We can literally plot it from January 1st all the way up to December 31st for that year. And you're looking at all these bar charts, and it just looks like grass. And then what you see in some years, it's just literally flat across the bottom with that minimum of 5 to 10 a day type of thing. And then you see one day it almost goes off the page.
Yes.
So one of the ones I had here, give you an example, in 2009, 248 one day, 349 in 2010, 255 in 2011, 2012, 365. And this is one of my favorites, 2014, 412 in one day. Okay, now
do those dates correlate in any fashion?
Yes. So let me go back to 2008. I'll give you a good example. Okay. I was looking at the thing. Now let's take a look at the state of Indiana. Indiana is one of these states that was lucky to have 2 sightings a week. Okay. And so probably they would have something on the order of about 4 sightings a month. Okay. On April 16, 2008, the national chart, when I printed that, and when I do a graph on that on the computer, the day of April 16, 2008, shot up above that 20, 25 a day, 30 a day type of thing to 60 in one day. So I did a breakout and had about 15 states involved. And the 15 states, it was onesie twosies type of thing for sightings. Okay. Frequently it's onesie twosies and one of these big spikes. But Indiana had 25 in one day. That's a state that has maybe 2 a week.
Right.
So we did a break again. I go back in and run a different kind of report, did a breakout within Indiana. And those 25 were scattered around the state, except there were a whole bunch of them. And by the way, they basically were split. The sighting that in that day was split between 2 counties and about 12 municipalities between the 2 counties.
Really?
It didn't ever get any kind of national news. It got local news. I went back and Googled those dates, and I found out, yeah, there was local news coverage for several days afterwards. Okay. Almost a week afterwards. But it never bubbled up to the national news services.
I'm going to have to interrupt you again. We have to take a break. These breaks.
Come back on that thought.
We will. So we'll be right back. Y'all come back too. We've got another question going here, and we'll see you on the flip side.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate magazine, and we are talking with Cheryl Costa, and we were talking about those Indiana sightings, Cheryl, that had just left, and we're getting local coverage, but nothing national.
Well, this was one of those things I discovered in the 2 years between in the 2 or 3 years between the books. I started looking at these spikes that you would, if you printed out a year's worth of day-to-day sightings. Like I said, it ran between about 5 and say 30 per year, to about 25 per day, and you'd see a spike jump up out of the grass. And when you started looking at it, some of them were just onesie-twosies across a whole bunch of states that day. Some of them concentrated in one state. And that's what was interesting, because whenever I looked at it, dug into the press for a certain locale, you could see that there might have been some little bit of press coverage locally, but it would never, ever bubble up to the national level, which kind of goes in with what Stephen Bassett and a number of other people, ever since Dr. Eugene Condon back in '68 told Congress and the press, oh, there's nothing to this thing, don't waste your money on it. National press stopped reporting this stuff casually.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I had a question a couple of weeks ago. People said to me, well, why don't you study the great sightings in the 40s, 50s, and 60s? And I said, because
that was then.
Well, that was then, but people seem to think that's the golden age. Newspapers reported the stories back then, and that's what gave it the sensation. Give you an example from 1960 to 2000, and for the Pink Book, I actually went back to both services and I asked them if I could have that data as well. I didn't want the sighting data; I just wanted the magnitudes. Okay, the 40 years between 1960 and 2000 only amounted, and this is between both databases, 13,150. sightings total for 40 years. Okay. I've got that many in 2012 and in 2013 each year. 2001 to 2020, we had 167,632 sightings. Baby, we are in the platinum age of UFOs right now.
Yep.
And most people don't get it. They think that all happened back in the 40s and 50s. No, we're up to our butts in UFOs right now.
Well, I am interested in, and Robert just asked the question, do your spikes, when tied into geographical data, show some areas that are hotter than others, or so-called window areas? I hear
okay.
Linda.
Yeah, okay. What that is people always drop me these notes and want to know where the hot spots are, Cheryl. Okay.
Well, this isn't even that. This is just, does it show that some areas are hotter than others? He's not necessarily asking for sites.
I'll give you an example, though. Remember I said about the Indiana? It was down to two counties and about 12 municipalities in those two counties.
Yes.
Okay. A lot of these other spikes, very frequently, if they just aren't scattered, not onesie-twosies across 40 states or something like that, that day, that gave us this 200 or 300 sightings in one day over the normal 30 a day type of thing, then usually it goes down to some regional locality. Okay. I've identified about 150 places that you've never heard of. that had a one-day event. I wouldn't call it a hotspot because it happened one time there. Okay. But boy, it had something cool happen.
Right.
Okay. So the deal is when people they call me all the time and they say, "Hey, where's the hot spots?" And of course, they hear these news stories out there that say Maine and Vermont are the hot spots for UFOs. Well, it is if you look at it from a per capita standpoint, because they got low populations and a certain number of sightings. But if you go for raw numbers, I mean, I had a guy call me up and said, "Hey, we want to have a camping party where we go out there and wait for the UFOs. Maine's supposed to be the hot spot." And I said, "Yeah, you'll be lucky to see 2 in a month there. You want to go someplace where they see, 5 a day, go down along Suffolk County, Long Island."
Right. So people are actually wanting to go, and are these people that are trying to do like the CE5 experience, or just trying to interact at all?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Sometimes they just want to go out there and sightsee. Can't do the camping thing, break out the dome tents.
What they ask for.
Yeah, the problem is that if they go to the places where the numbers have been done by per capita, they're in for a long wait.
Right.
Okay. Now, so let's look at it this way. People all call me up and say, "Hey, where's the hot spots?" I said, "Are you talking about a geographical location? Are you talking about a particular period in the last a particular day or week in the last 20 years? Are you talking about a specific shape?" Because I've got dates out there that it wasn't much of anything going on, but boy, there was a whole cluster of one particular shape in the country that day, all over the country.
I think Robert is looking for the geographical data. Just something
that's tougher, but yeah, there are some geographical places that get it down. It depends it depends upon what you're looking for and what kind of a time frame. I've got at least 6 to 7 variables I have to ask when somebody wants to know about a particular geographical location. Is it in a certain time period? Are you looking for a certain shape? There's a bunch of stuff to look at because it's not just UFOs, one size fits all. We've got 29 different UFO shape profiles that are identifiable. Total of 30 between both databases, but a couple of them are like a light in the sky or unknown, anomalous, that kind of thing. 29 are definable: triangle, circle, square, that type of thing. So I have to ask specifics because it almost always my answer is not good enough for them. Almost always it's not, because they want to go someplace where they can expect to see one of these things pop down sometime over their weekend or something, and it doesn't work. I've had documentary film producers come to me out of Washington and out of New York say, can you predict where they're going to be? And I said, no, I can't.
Good heavens.
Well, you can if you go hang out with the CE5 people. They have a pretty good record at having these things show up at their little.
They do.
Beam a message home to aliens, but and I admire them. By the way, that was not a crack against them.
It wasn't.
I have a great deal of respect for the CE5. In fact, I'm looking forward to joining Linda and I right now are not doing much of anything with this stuff right this minute. It won't be until January, because we're moving to Cleveland, Ohio on December 15th.
That is a random spot for you.
Yeah. So we're moving there, and once we get set up again, what Linda and I will be doing is we're going to start publishing. Remember we told you we were going to publish 50 books and 29 shape books?
You did.
Well, we're going to do, once we get settled out there, our new digs will have a kind of we'll have office space in it that we can actually lay out a project that big. And
just so you know, I go that way a lot, so.
You'll have to come up and have dinner with us.
Absolutely.
Actually, the funny thing we're doing with that is we decided, well, no. The funny thing we're doing with the new place, the apartment we're getting, we always fight over what's going to be my office and what's going to be the sewing room. We both sew, extensively, costumers, that kind of thing.
Right.
So what we decided was who was going to get the spare bedroom for that. So we decided to do something very radical. Hey, we're a couple ladies in our 60s drawing pensions, got AARP cards, that kind of thing. So we decided to do something very interesting. We don't entertain that much. We're turning the master bedroom into a TV parlor. We're putting our bed in the smaller of the two bedrooms, and we're taking the area that would normally be considered a living room, dining room area, and we're turning it into an industrial studio.
Well, there you go. The best of all worlds.
It's the best of all worlds. We'll have all of our sewing equipment out there if we want to use a huge 4x8 project table, and I'll have my whole nest for doing all this publishing work. And that's what the plan is. And we've laid it out. We had the floor plans for the apartment. We laid it out on a couple of rainy Sundays here about a month or two ago. And we signed a lease a few weeks ago, and we just signed a contract with the movers. We're going to be out of here on the 14th of December. And we'll be out there by the 16th. So,
well, congratulations.
Thank you. We're looking forward to it. Linda came to me about 6 months ago, said she was going to retire in the October-November timeframe. I said, okay. She says, I'm a Cleveland girl. I'd like to go home. I had nothing holding me here. I'm disowned and disinherited, so I absolutely have nothing holding me here in New York State. So I said, sure, let's pack up and go.
Well, that's just perfect.
So now let me give you something. I don't know how soon we're screaming up on break here.
You got 4 minutes.
Okay.
Plenty of time.
On the UFO side here, we can drill down, and if your friend there has specific requests, I'll make sure I'll give you my off air. I'll give you my email address. If he has a specific geographic area or something like that, he should ask me, and I'll run him a report. Okay, I'll run reports for people. I won't give them a database, but I will run a specialized report for them.
Well, I will make sure he's listening, so we will make sure that he knows that and can get that information to you.
You want to hear the sad part about that offer? I made that offer to the MUFON and MUFON investigators. I've had 2 in the last 8 years take me up on it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I have some coordinates.
Well, no,
I will get some stuff to you because I have experiences that I would like to know if they were shared.
Well, okay, one thing I got to qualify to your listeners, okay? Remember, Linda and I only track 21st century, so we only track 2001 to 2020.
What are you saying about my age?
Well, no, I'm saying that because people invariably, on shows like this, people will come back to me and they'll give me some sighting from 1989 or 1975 or something like that. We don't track that kind of data. We only have 21st century data.
Well, that works for me because that's what I am. So
okay,
it's really interesting. I have things show up around my home often, and out of curiosity, and you may not know this off the top of your head, do you have anything to indicate in your data that there's an interest in meteor showers by these craft?
No. Tom Conwell will tell you that he's used our data. That's why he knows this. He has figured out that they're interested in our fault lines.
Yes.
They're interested in our most polluted rivers, most polluted lakes, our dead mining towns, dead coal fields, gas fields, brown fields, basically our waste areas that we have created. They seem to be intently interested on that type of thing. We use an area up. We have a strip mine. We use it all up and then leave it, And so he knows all about that. And
yes.
Now I saw an interesting documentary a couple of days ago. I can't remember the guy's last name. Jamie Musin, I think his name. He's a Mexican journalist. And they had a documentary on Netflix. And it was about the volcanoes down there.
Right.
And tracking the amount of UFOs on infrared cameras that are coming down and literally going into the volcanoes. In some cases, apparently they have the ability. Yeah, they're going in there and actually squashing the eruptions.
Wow, that I was unaware of that. I've not seen that documentary, but I bet I do.
I recommend it strongly. It was a very good documentary.
I love getting led the right way. But
Yeah.
we have to take our news break, as you mentioned. This show is just going. So we will be back. If you have additional questions, we're still working on Robert's, but please do put yours into the chat room, because I just love this stuff, and I love having her available to answer your questions. She does it very well. So join us. We'll be right back. You come back too. And I'm ever hopeful. I'm always hopeful that we're going to get a little good news. So let's see what we find. See you on the flip side.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Spectrum Business. To help small business owners cut their internet and phone costs, Spectrum Business has created a new savings calculator. Go to spectrum.com/business calculator, and you can see how much you'll save by switching to Spectrum Business. Restrictions apply.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. President Biden traveled to his hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania today to again talk up his Build Back Better plan. Biden saying for too long the middle class has been footing more than its share of the tax bill, while billionaires and some Fortune 500 firms paid little or no federal taxes. Speaking at the Electric Trolley Museum there, Biden noting American highways in many cases are crumbling due to disrepair.
There are 173 miles of roads in poor conditions that have to be built up, including more than 3,300 bridges and over 7,500 miles of highways here in the state of Pennsylvania that need to be repaired and built.
Biden said the U.S. once ranked first in terms of infrastructure. It's now fallen to 13th. He also said his larger spending plan, which is being scaled back to roughly $2 trillion, will not increase the federal deficit. For the third time this year, Senate Republicans have blocked action on federal voting rights legislation using the Senate procedure known as the filibuster. As NPR's Juana Summers explains, Democrats say federal legislation is needed to offset a wave of new voting restrictions from GOP-led states.
Senate Republicans have blocked debate on a voting rights bill that the White House has described as a must-pass priority. Among other things, it would establish Election Day as a national holiday and set national minimum standards for early voting and vote by mail. It also includes standards for states that require voter ID. 60 votes are needed to break a filibuster. In the closely divided Senate, that means 10 Republicans would have needed to join Democrats. But Republicans, including Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, have said the effort is a political power grab by Democrats and an attempted federal government takeover of elections. Juana Summers, NPR News, the Capitol.
The White House says it's operationally ready to roll out COVID-19 vaccines for children. As NPR's Ping Wong reports, it's pending authorization from the FDA and the CDC.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, chief medical advisor to the president, says kids 5 to 11 years old should get vaccinated as soon as they are able.
In the era of Delta, children get infected as readily as adults do, and they transmit the infection as readily as the adults do.
Over the next 2 weeks, the FDA and CDC are having public discussions on whether the data on Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine show they are safe and effective in children. There are 28 million kids ages 5 to 11 in the U.S. Fauci says that half of all kids who get infected are asymptomatic, so getting most of them vaccinated would play a major role in stopping the virus from spreading in their communities. Ping Huang, NPR News.
A mixed close on Wall Street. The Dow was up 152 points. The Nasdaq closed down 7 points today. This is NPR. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation says it will spend $120 million to boost access to generic versions of drug maker Merck's antiviral COVID-19 pill for lower-income countries. Once government regulators approve the drug, the private foundation says it will use the funds to support the range of activities required to develop and manufacture generic versions. Merck has licensed its technology to generic drug makers in India. The company said it will provide licenses to manufacturers to supply the drug to India and more than 100 other lower and middle-income countries. A new study shows parents want greater racial and ethnic diversity in the media their children watch. As NPR's Elizabeth Blair reports, the study by Common Sense Media says Hollywood entertainment continues to fall short.
Common Sense Media surveyed more than 1,100 parents and caregivers of children between the ages of 2 and 12. The demographics were representative of the U.S. population. Nearly 80% said they want their children to be exposed to media that teaches them about different cultures, religions, and lifestyles.
Hola, soy Dora, and I'm Films.
For positive representation, caregivers gave high marks to shows like Dora the Explorer and Sesame Street. Cited among the worst were Grand Theft Auto and content on YouTube. The report found that characters of color most watched by children are more likely to be depicted as violent. Elizabeth Blair, NPR News.
Crude oil futures prices rose to a new 7-year high today following stocks higher. Oil up 1.3% after earlier in the session losing ground. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
How do we reinvent ourselves? And what's the secret to living longer? I'm Anoush Zamarodi. Each week on NPR's TED Radio Hour, we go on a journey with TED speakers to seek a deeper understanding of the world and to figure out new ways to think and create. Listen now.
Welcome back to the second hour of Fate Magazine. I'm so happy that you're here. That would be Fate Magazine Radio. I don't know if you have got your subscription up to date, if you're getting any of our fabulous new issues, if you're looking to fill your collection, because we have unpublished, uncirculated, not unpublished, issues that are available. We have shirts, we have trading cards, we have all the things. And of course, if you don't have a subscription to Fate Magazine, you can go and get it taken care of right there at fatemag.com. We have all things Fate. Phyllis, our editor, is just the most brilliant person. She can help you with anything, and Cheryl can vouch for that, as a matter of fact. So, Cheryl, I am so glad that you are here with me. I always enjoy our conversations and the education that you provide. So I just am thrilled that you're here. And we have a new question.
Sure.
And I'm interested because I've never asked you this either. Robert is one of my favorite people. He's been affiliated with Fate for so long, and he guides well. Do you track Type E encounters or close encounters with non-humans without accompanying UFO sightings?
That information is not publicly available on MUFON, to my knowledge. I've never seen this. Every now and then there's an entity marker that they have in the database, and it almost never has anything in it. So no, I don't have any way of tracking that. On the other hand, regarding we're probably talking about people who have a firsthand experience with off-worlders, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, no, I don't have a way to track that. And for the longest time, I thought the same thing a lot of other people do, that the people who get touched are just, complaining about that they got probed or something like that. I used to believe that. And then I got to go to an experiencers meeting at one of the major conferences.
Oh, that is so eye-opening. I too have been allowed to observe one of those.
I went into it half expecting. I had to talk to a psychologist who was the moderator and letting me, because I was there on press credentials.
Yes.
And I said, I won't out anybody. I just want to learn. And I expected, and Linda and I went to this thing. We both have expected to meet 25, 30 people crying in their coffee. They got probed. We get in there, and this meeting has about 150, 175 people, and it's got all the energy of a tent revival.
Yes.
And it was very, very different than what I expected. And many more other meetings I have since had with the Experiencer crew. I got to meet a lot of people. I got to interview. I didn't get to publish much about any of them because I did confidentiality, but I did want to document it. So something that came out of this was last year, I was involved with what they call a television incubator with a studio out in Los Angeles, and I wrote a pilot for a TV series about experiencers. And
I did not know you did that.
A lot of people didn't. In fact, Kathleen Martin participated with me.
She's brilliant. I adore her.
She checked over the script. Also, Susan and I'm going to draw Hansen in New Zealand. Okay, another brilliant lady about this topic matter. They both went over the script and gave me notes. Okay, it's not so much about the story as much as when we got to a point in this pilot episode, there was going to be a regression. They corrected me on certain protocols with the regression, so that I had it exactly down.
Good.
Okay.
Well,
so
that would be the two best to provide that info. Two of the best.
Absolutely. Well, amazingly enough, when I pitched it, the way it worked was you got the pitch to what they call a line producer, okay, and then the line producer's notes would get pushed up to Mr. Big, a senior producer. And the line producer kind of blew the topic matter off. Says, "Oh yeah, there was a show a year or two ago, People of Earth. It was a comedy. It wasn't that good." And I said, "Yeah, that's the problem. It was a comedy, and they made the people look like a bunch of idiots."
Oh my gosh!
I mean,
what a bunch of dipsticks.
That's exactly what it made it look like. And I said, "This is
the production company looked like that."
Well, the thing was, they were trying to make a comedy, and it actually dealt less with the abductees and experiencers, and it had its own alien thread of story that ended up dominating things, all the politics with the aliens, so it wasn't that good, really. And
well, it's terrible though that you can't track those encounters so that you can provide information relevant to.
There are some databases that are tracking this stuff that are not part of the national databases. Now, if MUFON is tracking it, they're not making it available. Okay, and I think they are to a degree, because I was talking.
Well, they would be very much about confidentiality.
Yes, they would. I was talking with Earl Gray. He's the senior investigator for Los Angeles County, since it's the county that gets the most sightings in the country. And he told me they had a big flap out there a year or two ago with triangles, not actually triangles, chevron shapes, kind of like the ones they saw in Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And there were some people who were abducted. Okay, some of them had tissue samples taken, things like this, and he was part of the crew that documented all this. Okay. So back to the TV series, this producer wasn't, well, somebody did it, and she blew it off. I said, but this is a drama, and we've got good people who actually know about this are on my shoulder, and I know a great deal about it. And okay, fine. Well, it got in front of the executive producer, and he dissed it. So I've been sitting on this very lovely script with all the pitching information they want, the log line, the synopsis, and hell, I even wrote an entire series synopsis for the first season, 16 programs. I outlined 16 programs. Okay.
That's a good bit of work, girl.
Yeah, nobody does that much work if they're not being paid these days. So I did the whole thing spec. And I've been sitting on it for the last 2 years. And about 2 weeks ago, I know a number of producers, and I dropped this one producer I know who's interested in UFO material. I dropped them a text on the phone. Didn't even call them up. I just dropped them a text. I said, "You interested in a UFO TV series?" He says, "What's your log line?" And I dropped them the log line. He comes back 10 minutes later, says, "What's the synopsis?" I typed that in, sent it to him. Can you get me the script? And I said, "I will send you a script. I will send you a treatment, and I will send you an outline synopsis for the first season." He said, "Do it." So I don't know where it's going, but I got his attention.
Well,
he was
that's
actually
a plus because
that's
that's
the
not
trick.
easy.
No, it's not. It's not. So, it is all, while you see stuff in the entertainment realm. Like I said, I wrote this 1 hour drama very much like an episode you might see like 6 Feet Under. It was a very sophisticated story. Okay. And that I took that approach. It wasn't silly. It was straightforward. Here's a guy that's got a good career. Oh, we find out that when he was a teenager and a junior member of the volunteer fire department, this is based on a true story, by the way, that I interviewed back for my my newspaper column. Him and a guy were up in the fire tower during fire season out there in the woods, and some people saw some bright lights out there by the fire tower, and they couldn't contact the teenagers. And they get out there to teenagers and find these guys unconscious, their blood pressure's through the roof. And they were unconscious for almost a whole day, almost 24 hours. And then when they were coming to, the sides of them that faced the UFO were severely sunburned. Okay. And so.
Well, that is not an unusual effect.
That's the real story right
Yeah.
there. So what I did was I extrapolated out a story that was in the early 1970s. So I wrote a story where one of the guys had died, and that's actually true too. Had died a few years ago. And but the fictional part was somebody who knew him, who was at the wake, said, "Oh my God, there's so and so. He saw the UFO like the guy in the box did." And they out him at the wake. It's an experience.
Well, if you're going to be outed, there's not a good place, but at least
that's where it happened. And so the deal was, we had a minister take the guy's side out away from the wake and said, "Oh, by the way, I know the guy in the box, and he told me everything. And oh, by the way, I hear confessions all the time, and all these former fighter pilots telling me that they can't catch these things. Da, 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 da. It's real. I know." And then he puts the individual in touch with a person who is a psychiatrist, who were kind of a female version of Dr. Mack. Okay. It's my character that I wrote in this thing. And so that's kind of where I went with the story. And it branches.
It picked up.
I hope it does too, because we wrote some good stories in there. One of them was like, you're at a UFO conference and you meet somebody that looks like your teenage self. I've talked to people like that. Apparently E.T. took genetic material and hatched another one. There's been a couple of situations where a wife went out and did the DNA thing, looking for family, and found people who were an allele match to her husband, who had been abducted. Okay. This type of thing. I have met women and interviewed women who said that they have met their own hybrid children.
Yes, I've met women who have had that experience as well. It fascinates me. And it fascinates me with one in particular who says that her relationship with the other parent of her son, is still her relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that just is a whole different side, really, of ufology. It's not something that people really come to. But I have talked with multiple women who have experienced their children who were part of the disappearing fetus syndrome.
I had a conversation. I had a conversation with a woman right here in my own living room, and she was here for a completely different purpose. Okay. And it was a certain, think of it like a Tupperware party or something like that. Okay. And as everybody was starting to go home, she snagged me and says, "I read your column. Can I talk to you about some stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, all right." I figured it was going to be a sighting story or something. Right. And it ended up being this kind of an account. And the more I listened to it, the more I realized this is genuine, because there were markers in the story that you could pretty much tell this was a genuine deal. And I got her to talk to two of our local regression investigators here, and they came back and says, yeah, she's solid, So yeah, this stuff does happen. A lot of people don't believe me, I was talking a long time ago. You probably know who Lorian Fenton is, another investigator, talk host. And Larry and I were talking, and I said, hey, I had a lady come to me and tell me that she has this relationship with a reptilian.
Yeah.
And Lorian told me, oh yeah, I got about 4 of them. I said, really? And I gave her the kind of the high level details and said, no, that sounds pretty genuine. And the funny thing is, this is the funny agenda we see out there on the internet. If you Google like Greys, you'll get all kinds of artwork of Greys. If you Google like reptilians, they always seem to be these fierce looking guys with muscular chests, very looking like they need a case of prunes. They have that look to them, like they're really aggressive.
Well, the better to be fit enough to chase us, to eat us, as we have fear, right? I mean,
exactly.
That's what they're portrayed as.
Yes, they're portrayed that way. The thing is, everybody I've talked to that has had an engagement with the aliens, they're soft-spoken, they're enlightened, they're as gentle as hell.
Not everyone I have spoken with has found them to be enlightened and gentle.
Okay. The ones I've interviewed, that has been the case.
Right. Well, I think that it's just like humans. I mean, it would be ridiculous to assume that all of them are the same. Right?
True. They're not. They're not all militaristic.
Personalities, and they're going to be mannerisms, and not everyone is altruistic. But we have to take a break. Darn it!
Okay.
We will be right back. Y'all come back too, and thank you so much for being here with us. Again, please bring any questions you have, and we're going to move on to a couple of other topics near and dear to Cheryl's heart. So we'll see you in just a moment.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
We are confident that none of our hosts are possessed. Being repossessed a few times? That might be a different story. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am so glad you're here. I am Kat Hobson, your host, the voice of Fate Magazine. as one of my friends says, the voice of fate. I like that, right? Who wouldn't? So, I am talking with my friend Cheryl Costa, who has more UFO data than you can shake a stick at. I'm Southern, it comes out data. I'm sorry. I know it's data. But I'm working on that. My Southernisms kind of get me looked askance on occasion. So, Cheryl, you've got a lot more than just the ufology going on right now, because you have a new podcast that's about to start. You have a new book that's out for peer review. You have this upcoming move that I had no idea about, and I'm so excited because that'll put us in a realm of at least getting to see each other every couple of years if we're not at cons. And I want to talk about some of your other stuff too, because the ufology fascinates me, but everything else is equally fascinating. So let's let her rip. You ready? All right. Well, which is coming first, the book or the show? Let's do. It is. And go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, hold on just a minute, because we seem to be having a little bit of a difficulty.
Go ahead.
Say, oh, I have your feed now. We're good.
Okay, so 44 years as a Wiccan, and 30 of that as a priestess, and I technically retired in December of last year from pastoral duties, all that kind of stuff. Still witch, but I just don't. I was representing the local pagan community at the local community of church clergy, that type of thing. I sat on the board over there.
Yes, and you were actually the first person that I encountered who held that type of position. You educated me in that realm as well. So I appreciate that too, because what you were doing there was so important.
Amazingly enough, nobody else wanted to step up and take the position. I didn't want to hang on to it forever. I wanted somebody else to see, okay, I broke the barrier down. Somebody else can do this, but nobody else did. And that breaks my heart a little bit, but it's not for me to judge it. Maybe it wasn't their time and season. We'll see what happens. So what happened was, there's a kind of a tradition when priestesses semi-retire, sooner or later they write their book of magic, or their book, memoir of their life in the witchcraft community. So I had written a draft of mine back in 2004. My adult daughter, she's an adopted daughter, my adult daughter was a magical adept in her own right, very talented one actually. She thought I had made it sound so easy, and to quote her, "You're handing out loaded shotguns to third graders," because I had written a book to make the magic so easy to understand. There's a lot of books on magic are so gobbledygook. They got so much, they put so much woo into it that, to make it sound mysterious. And so the new book I wrote a couple of months ago, it was a columnist for Wicca magazine, 2008 to about 2020. Okay. So a lot of my articles were these 500 to 800 word essays. So I took a collection of those, and I sat down with a friend of mine one day over coffee, and we started ranking them, and we decided that there was enough there for a book. So basically I wrote a book, and the title is, at the title of the book, we went through various generations of the title, but the book is called Magical Musings of a Rogue Witch by me. And what's so funny about it is that we put all these essays together, and we explain the functionality and the way to work with magic and explore it so easy. I made it read very much like we're going out here to use my power tools in the shop. This is how you use a bandsaw. This is how you use a table saw. This is how you use a drill press, and we made the mechanics of the magic that easy. Okay.
Well, and that's just astounding that that's even a possibility.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from a lot of people. Oh, that can't be. I said, trust me, it is. I don't care if you don't believe. Trust me, it is.
Yes.
My wife came into my household, 15 years ago after we had a sacred union. Okay, this is before we could get legally married. 5 years later. Okay, and I warned her when she came into my household. I said, "Okay, you have to. This is a magical household. The rules are different here. Things happen here that you won't be able to explain. So you just roll with it." Okay. And that was the attitude I had to take with her. And I said, don't say anything. Don't think anything you don't want to have happen. And she didn't really have a grasp of that for a number of years, but she has a solid grasp of it now.
Right.
She has seen some amazing things in this household and experienced some amazing experiences. And she said, I get it. So she's actually publishing the book, in our self-published business we have. Would you believe our UFO books finally turned a profit last year?
Well, then go you. Congratulations.
Well, the joke I made to my accountant was, he says, hey, you turned a profit to the point where it actually hurts you financially, tax-wise, And I'm going, oh, wonderful. Just keep up the good work. We'll find something to write off, So this book, I wrote it. It was, I actually put it together in under a month, just, organizing everything that I wanted to use of those essays. And editing is hard for me because I'm dyslexic. I look at big walls of text and it tends to wrap on me. So what I do is I have the computer read it back to me. Yes. That's how I edit. And actually it probably works better, And so we put it together. And then about a week or two ago, I reached out to probably a half dozen experienced priestesses. I mean, seasoned ones. Most of them are published authors in their own right. And you'd recognize their names if you know anything about that topic matter. And I asked them if they would take a read of it, and if they liked it, would they write a blurb for the back of the book? And they said, sure. So they read it. Well, the first two I got here in the last day or two were just like, one of them says, this is the book every beginner should be using. And she says, this is a quote, I got it from her this afternoon. I wrote this book on a scale of 1 to 10. I rated a 13. And another one was, say, this is the mechanics. This is mechanics of magic made easy. Everybody should have this book, So I'm being very flattered by the peer review going on right now. And I have there's a term, I don't know if you've ever heard of this magical practice called bruja.
A bruja.
Okay.
I have. I'm sorry to say that I don't recall the definition.
Okay, well, it's essentially a Latin, Mexican, Central American magical practice. Their tradition. Hence, you hear the term with somebody saying, something gets all screwed up. The bruja. I used to think it meant. I used to think that it meant, something that was all screwed up and messed up. No, it was referring to some kind of a magical screw up, and the joke we have about magic is, it's like the old term they say to error is human, to screw up takes a computer, to exponentially screw up takes magic. And everybody's had that, oh my, what did I do moment in magic. Oh, yes. Trust me, we've all made those blunders. Okay, I've made some fine ones over the years. But the bottom line, that's what the nature of the book is. I wasn't initially planning to market it as a beginner's book, but at least 3 of the priestesses have come back to me and said, You need to change the back cover. This needs to be something that every beginner should be reading.
I think that's interesting.
I was surprised. Like I said, I was shocked. About 2 hours before the show, I got a couple of these blurb feedbacks from a couple of the priestesses. So I'm excited about the fact that I got them, and I'm flabbergasted because I thought there were going to be people that were going to senior witches that were going to hate the way I approached it. Because I stripped away all the curtains, and there it is as easy as making a loaf of bread in your kitchen or running up some wood through your shop in the back room.
A friend of mine gifted me Italian. Oh, please, come on, Brian. But it's Italian magic.
Strega.
Italian magic book.
Yeah.
And basically, it is like recipes.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. So
yeah, it is.
It doesn't seem, it's not as overwhelming as one would think. And
the thing most people don't get is they see it in the movies, that somebody mixes something up in a cauldron, or somebody puts a bunch of herbs and herbs and a little note with the wish and things, stuff it in a little bottle, like baby food bottle or something like that, and bury it in the backyard. Yeah, that's a technique, but I explain what that technique is doing, and I have this. Here are the mechanics of the magic, and this is one technique people have used over the years. And I cut to the chase and say, would you like to practice 21st century magic? Here's how to do it. Okay. And the trick is, and this is the hard part, you have to learn to meditate. Okay.
That is the hard part. And I'm going to tell you that, especially if you have ADD or ADHD or stress or life in general, I mean, meditation is good for the soul because it's how you interact with your higher powers and your higher self.
Yep.
And it's where you get trained. So if you can't do that for some reason, you have to find what's blocking that so that you can continue to be the best and most elevated self that you are. So do you help with that?
Yes. In my book, I basically tell everybody the most important thing to do is shut off your phone and learn and get yourself on a schedule of giving yourself 2 minutes of meditation a day. I'm not expecting you to go sit in some temple someplace. I want you to give me 2 minutes. I don't care if you close your office door and give yourself an egg timer to time yourself for 2 minutes of quieting yourself and being alone with your thoughts. I even make the comment and say, if you can't schedule your time that any better than that, then just close the stall in the ladies' room or men's room and just do it there for 2 minutes every day at lunchtime.
Because you're going to be there for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
At some point in your day.
Just quiet yourself.
Yes.
And then I teach them how to build that up over a period of many, many, many months. A lot of Americans seem to think, well, if those Asian monks can do it for an hour, so can I. No, they started when they were 7.
Trained.
They started when they were 7.
Yes.
And so the deal is, I explained to them, this is the part. I can teach you all the mechanics, but basically, if you can't meditate, there's absolutely no electrical power in your shop. Yeah. That power saw won't work. That bandsaw won't work. That drill press won't work. That planer won't work. Okay. If you don't learn to meditate, because you have to be able to quiet your mind to project the visualization into what we call the younger self, which goes to the higher self, and that's how it's manifested. And that I harp on this something unmercifully through all these essays. And
that is exactly what you should harp on, because without that, I don't care if you are looking at practical magic, if you're looking at a better life, better health, whatever, that's where you achieve those things, is through your time. There's a Bible verse that says, be still and know I am God.
Yes, thank you.
That is your meditation. That's your go take time with you and God. To go take time with you.
Yes.
And, that's imperative. It's biblical. It's Buddhist. It is everything. Everything has that component. Every faith does.
I lost some students a couple of years ago, a year-long class, I lost some students last year during the lockdown. I had 45 students. First time I'd ever taught a virtual class. Okay, 45 students. Now, I expected to lose half in the first 2 or 3 months because once people get into it and understand, it's actually a lot of work. It's not just lighting candles and dancing around in funny clothes.
Yes.
Yeah, well, they start understanding that there's history you have to understand. It's like going through a degree program for like a 2-year degree or certificate program. And people realize that, or they also find out that the particular tradition I'm teaching isn't what they were resonating to, or they were still searching. And we were usually in a position where we could point them at somebody, Well, during the course of which I was teaching them heavy meditation in the thing, and I was teaching them how to do remote viewing. Because if you can remote view, then you can do just the same tools you need to remote view are the same tools you need to work active magic. And I had one person, when one of the targets we did with the students was we literally touched the base on the backside of the moon. And I've had many students touch that target. They didn't know that was the target, but
that's such an interesting target.
Oh, yes, it is, because, over 20 years, I've taught about 6 or 7 remote viewing classes. And this isn't like a 1 weekend class. This is like a 6-month effort, a couple of Sundays a month for like 6 or 7 months or a year or whatever. And almost all those students, that target card got rotated into the bag of blind cards that somebody else would stuff for us. And they've all been there. They've all touched it. Okay. And
because there's so many people that will say there is no base on the dark side of the moon. How can I touch that?
And well, they didn't know they were touching it until we got to the end of the session. We're doing analysis and we opened the card.
Right.
But in most cases, the students would come out of the session, the data mining of the remote viewing, and women would sit there at the table and say, "Wow, whoever those people were, they did not want us there." And then we'd open the card and they'd all crap their knickers. It was very fun to watch. We also discovered a couple of phenomena. We used to do our class after classes. We do what we call an away team. Certain people lock on to the location, the environment. Some people lock onto the energetics. Some people lock onto the structure. Some people lock onto the being. So we've had a couple of target cards where it was a jet, some kind of a jet fighter breaking the sound barrier, and the people who lock on the being are quite literally in the cockpit with them, or quite literally in the spacesuit with them. They don't know they are, but they're sitting there drawing space helmets in the margins and stuff, and don't know why they are.
That is too fascinating.
I lock onto that kind of stuff myself. So we've had these people do these things. Well, this one person in the class turned out she was not really there to learn the art. She was there. I got it out of her at this point after about 8 months of being in my class, that she was just there academically. Oh, so you're just here to learn this stuff but not practice. Just, yeah. And
well,
I think
why
all
would
this
you put forth the work and not have the practice?
Well, that was the point. She says, well, I go to classes all the time. And so that explained why she was always argumentative in class, because she was always pulling from somebody else's teaching.
Oh, well.
And pitting me against whatever I said against what they said, And she told me one day, she says, well, I don't want to do any more of this remote viewing and ESP crap. I can't get into the serious magic. I said, this is the serious magic. And because I teach it differently. Most people, you out buy a book out here at Barnes and Noble, and they'll start you right out with spell casting. I come from the school that says, no, we teach you how to meditate. We teach you how to touch the other parts of the universe. And we can either divine or we can do it with remote viewing. It's essentially a structured version of divining. If you learn that, then spell casting becomes the next stage in your ability to do this stuff. Instead of people out here spell casting, making little jars and things like this, if they don't know how to meditate to impress the image.
Yes, you have to put you into that, right?
Yes, and they don't know how to do it. They think it's just filling that little bottle is what it's all about, and it's not. you have to be in this quiet state. And that's what we run up against. So we lose a lot of people say, oh, I can't do this. And so then you can't do the magic.
Well, if you say that you can't do it, then you won't do it.
That too. Thank you.
You know, it's really funny because I am not Wiccan, but I understand the concepts of if you are going to do something and do it well, then you have to put yourself into it. No matter what you do, if you are not comfortable with yourself and aware of yourself and aware of your creator and what your not your place is, but you're part of the consciousness, because it is a collective consciousness.
It is. And that's the other part that's hard to explain to people, particularly where we get into the UFO woo-woo of it.
Oh, yes.
It's explaining that we are connected to everybody, everything, every being, everywhere, every when in the multiverse. We are connected to them. Now, does that mean I can reach out and touch a gray on Zeta Reticuli 39 light years from now? Yes and no.
Have you tried?
Oh, I've touched my share of ET over the years. No problem. But it's not, you just don't sit down and do it.
Well, I'm just curious because I know people that is their ultimate goal, is to have
well,
that
the
interaction.
CE5 people do it all the time. They've got a good set of programs.
CE5 do it with their meditation, but also through their meditation, they're communicating.
Thank you.
It's active communication.
Yes.
Not passive.
And yes, it is. It's a human initiated, and that's
oh my
one
gosh,
of the things
we have
I
to take
really
a break.
like.
How did this
Go ahead.
happen?
Go
We
ahead.
will be right back. I'll come back too.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to the final segment of Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate magazine, and my guest tonight is Cheryl Costa. And we are talking about her new book, and I am just so absolutely looking forward to this book coming out. But we were talking during the break, and you said, ask me about. So here you go.
The question was, ask me about what my number one
Your
rule.
number one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Well, okay. The more magic you know, the less you use. Point one.
That's logical.
Now, the other aspect of it, see, a lot of people approach magic and they think it's a big vending machine. Oh, all I have to do is work a spell and I'll get that new surfboard and I'll get this and I'll get that, you know. And it's, oh, by the way, while I technically have title and ordination as a Wicca priestess. I'm actually a priestess of Isis. I'm a member of the Sisterhood of Isis. So I'm if I'm dealing with gods and goddesses, I'm dealing with Egyptian pantheon gods and goddesses. But magic doesn't. A lot of people think it's all you have to embrace all these gods and goddesses, and there's baskets full of them. As my Hindu friends say, there's 33 million of them, right? Mm-hmm. And the deal is that, as one goddess that I know very well says, stop asking us for crap. Do it yourself. You carry the same God spark we do.
There you go.
Okay. And that's
every human. That's
every
soul.
Human, every soul instance is connected to everything, everywhere, every when. And when I hear witch community people say, well, I don't take no crap from nobody. I'm going to drop a whammy on something. Why would you do that? Right. Well, they deserve it. I said, yeah, but you're hurting yourself too, because you're connected to them. Why would you hurt yourself?
People don't get that. That is like in everyday society, right?
Yeah.
You have so many people that are so angry, and the vitriol is so strong, and we hate, because. And I don't care what the motivation you think you have is to carry hate within you. You're wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Because we all are the God particle. I'm sorry. They don't have to go and invent that.
That's exactly
there.
That's exactly it.
And they're spending all this money and running all these tests and the experience, looking for the Higgs boson and everything else. Well, you know what? You've got it. It's in you.
Yeah.
And people just ignore that, and then they want to be justified in their bad behavior or their bad attitudes. And we're supposed to be uplifting, caring, and supporting each other. All of us, for all of us. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I don't even know how the soapbox got under my feet.
No. It's good. It needed to come out. I was having a conversation with someone last evening, and when do you think we'll have jump drive, Cheryl? It's kind of on these UFO talks.
When we earn it.
Well,
when we earn it, but I mean,
when we start listening to Nikola Tesla, and remember he said that if science were to study the metaphysical for 10 years, they'd learn more than they'd learned in the last 100.
Well, instead we just put it in the corner, cover it up because it's all woo-woo, air quotes. Well, and we go and be scientists.
Yes.
Well, scientists hit brick walls all the time.
Well, the physicist I was talking with last night, I made a comment to him. I says, every location in the universe is contained within a single particle. The address is already there because it's already connected. Mm-hmm. So if you want to produce a jump drive, that'll get us to the other side of the galaxy or something like that. It's just a matter of resonating the particles that make that ship with a specific frequency for that location. And he looked at me and he said, that's brilliant. Where did you get that? I said, that's coming from my witchcraft training, guys. It's metaphysical training. It's not all goofiness. It's a different end of physics, and they don't get that.
But it is physics. It's metaphysics.
It is physics. It is physics, yes.
It's not particle physics. It's not quantum physics. It is quantum physics. But, it all comes into play. All of the sciences work together. But you have to be willing to listen to somebody else's background to help, like he was with you.
Yeah.
You're not going to get there trying to one-up the world.
No, you're not.
We're not even feeding people trying to one-up the world. How on earth are we going to be allowed off planet to go do something somewhere?
As one ET I talked to basically put it to me was, we don't want you off that rock because you're going to eat some of our friends.
Yep.
That's
true statement.
And the other reason they don't want us off this rock is they don't want us bringing all of we got 120 countries on this planet, and they don't want us bringing that politics out into
the separateness. I mean,
yeah, the separate. Thank
there's
you.
a collectiveness. You have to be collectively together.
That's exactly it. They're apparently getting very, very happy. They're very happy with the fact that we've got these groups like these CE5 groups trying to do this ambassadorial human initiated contact.
Yes.
And yes, people, you can do it if you work with the type CE5 protocols, and that's fine. But you're not going to sit down the first night, meditate what you think is meditation for 5 minutes, and do it the first time. Trust me.
You're not. But I'm going to tell you that if they feel you're ready, you don't even have to be trying.
I won't disagree with that. No.
Because I have experienced that, and I was not trying. I was just simply out watching meteors, and it's happened more than once. They like meteors, the meteor shows, and it's like that's the togetherness, that's the bond, is the love of the creation.
Well, it's you did something that what we call in magic. If you come into that environment with the openness of a child, with your hands out wide open, which is what you did. You were ready for it. You came with an innocent heart. Of course, they were going to reach out to you.
Well, they surprised me. But the first time they did, it wasn't a meteor shower, and it was kind of scary. And I was on the phone with somebody just to make sure, and I didn't get off, just to make sure I didn't have a lost time moment because I was scared, concerned.
Yeah.
And a little scared. But, it was just one of those things that make you go, well, they didn't hurt me. But I'm an outside on the deck looking up person, so they're probably used to me. I'm a hammock sitter and a dog owner, and I love this guy.
Being a dog owner, you're probably a more gentle person. So that goes a long ways. If they can see that you're not going to be hostile to them, that's a different ball game.
Well, I think that's
what people don't get.
I'm not a threat.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be ridiculous to presume I was anyway. I have nothing to threaten them with. I would never be considered a threat to them, I don't think. But my emotional status is not threatening at all. Not to them.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But it's just weird, don't you think, that it's so simple, that it's just mindset, and we as a civilization can't even do it with each other?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I don't blame them for not wanting us in the game at this point.
I'm in a supermarket. I'm over by the meat counter, specifically the fish counter. And, you have the mussels and you have like the clams. They're still alive in that cabinet.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I'm there, I stop by there and I say, remember, I used to be a Buddhist nun. Okay.
Yes.
A Buddhist monkette, So I always go over and say prayers for them because they're going to get steamed later,
Right.
And that is a compassion towards these lower beings. And you wouldn't believe how many people who have seen me, particularly in the meat department. Why are you over there praying over the mussels?
Because they're about to meet an ugly demise.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't get it. They don't get it at all. And
see, that's what's wrong with humans.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, that's what's wrong with humans.
Spirituality isn't sitting on a pew on Sunday and throwing a couple dollars in a basket.
It's representation and recognition. And I have very many people in my life who are Buddhists. One of them, actually, none of them are able to fully practice what they preach because of being human.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of forgiveness. There's not necessarily a lot of compassion. And as I sit back and watch that, I'm just kind of like, well, you're a terrible Buddhist witness. You're just terrible.
Yeah,
You're mean.
but
and you're,
remember, we're always
human.
we're always a student. Okay,
Yes.
we're always learning.
Yes. And so I sit there and I'm just kind of like, I'm judging Buddhists. I am so going to hell. This is terrible.
Nah.
But I'm not, because, I do think that we all have to learn at our own time, and we don't get it the first go round.
No.
So that's why there are opportunities to come back should you choose to, I believe.
One of my llamas looked at a couple of us. We were having a backyard barbecue with our llama. He liked to do that kind of stuff. So there were about 40 monks and nuns there. Some of the novices. I was one of the novices. And he's looking around. Somebody asked me, he says, we talk about beings off of our world. And he says, haven't you ever touched any? Oh, no, I don't think so. And he starts looking around. And you can tell this guy was like looking right through us. Mm-hmm. And he looked at three of us over in this one corner. Two of us were novices. He said, oh, you've been touched by the bikinis, sky dancers.
Right.
And we're both, me and Vicky were sitting there like blushing. We're, oh my God, don't out us, please. and none of the other monks and nuns would talk to us for almost a month, but no, see, that's the problem. Everybody is still a student. And
we will always be students. And that being said, we are so out of time.
Yep.
I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. But, thank you so much for being here, because I enjoy every conversation we get to have. And you are always uplifting. And I appreciate that. You bring great information. Your writing is brilliant. Would you please tell people what the working title is of your new book and the name of your new show that's going to be coming up that we didn't get to yet?
The new book isn't out yet. The witch book. Okay,
it's under peer review, but
it's under peer review right now. But it'll probably be out by spring. It's called Magical Musings of a Rogue Witch by Cheryl Costa. Okay, and then the other thing is in the spring we're going to be launching, as soon as we get to our new digs. Linda and I are going to start producing individual state books. You will be able to get a book about Alabama and its sightings right down to the city and zip code level. And we do what we do in the UFO Sightings Desk Reference, except we do it for a single state. So we're doing 50 books, and we're doing 29 shapes books, and then the two of us are going to toddle off into the sunset.
I don't see y'all toddling off anywhere for long.
Nobody does.
No. But you know what? Kudos to you if you find a way to do it, because that's what we're supposed to be working toward. So, for everyone listening, I know that y'all love Cheryl as much as I do, and I know that the information she provides can seem overwhelming, but it's not. Get the books. If you're interested, get the books. You will be astounded by the actual numbers, because I was fairly well versed in this before we started our friendship. So thank you again, Cheryl. For all the listeners, I will see you same cat time, same cat channel next week. Don't forget, we've got things coming up. I'm going to be traveling the week from the 1st through the 8th, so we will have fantastic rebroadcasts and might line up a guest host. You just never know. So stay tuned, stay updated. Thank you so much for supporting the show and the magazine. Fate magazine has been in publication since 1948, and it's still strong. So, thanks again. We will see you soon. And don't forget, be the change. You can manifest that. Don't like what you see, you change that in you, and you will get it back in spades. You're not doing it selfishly. You're doing it because the world is a better place when we're kind. So, take care of you. See you next week. Good night.